Could you give me a bottle of water? Thanks. I get up here and all of a sudden I'm dry mouthed. It's like, oh man, this is bad. I'm just getting started. All right, we're talking about leaders in the Bible is what we're talking about today. Y'all talked about Moses last week. We're going to be talking about Joshua this week. And we're going to start with in Joshua chapter 1. And it says, after the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord said to Joshua, son of Nun, Moses' aide, Moses, my servant, is dead. Now then, you and all these people get ready to cross the Jordan River into the land I'm about to give them to the Israelites. Now, that's the way this story starts here, right? But if you watch these TV shows, sometimes you say, thank you very much. These TV shows, they'll start off in the middle of something sometimes, and then it says 3 days later, so it jumps back, and then you finish the whole show 3 days up to this point here. Well, this is kind of what we're going to try to do here today. Moses has died, and God says, hey, you're in charge. Take these folks across the river. Now, they've been getting to that point for over 40 years now. So we're going to go back just a little bit and see where Joshua first comes on the scene. And that's in Numbers 13. And this is where they have gone through the wilderness and have made it to the land of promise. And Moses sends the spies out to spy out the land. And he picks 12 guys, one from each tribe. And of course, the two heroes of these 12 are Joshua and Caleb. Caleb from the tribe of Judah, and then from the tribe of Ephraim, Hoshea. Now, talking about leaders and how leaders work and that kind of thing, Moses must have seen something in Hoshea to say, I'm going to change your name. You're going to be Joshua. Because it says that in verse, 16 down there. Moses changed his name to Joshua. And I always hear, I know growing up, reading the Bible, and I always saw Joshua, son of Nun. He's always mentioned Joshua, son of Nun. I thought that's just a funny thing to, just hear in your head or roll off your lips. Like, well, nobody's as dead, but it's spelled different. But anyway, it's just a fun thing as a kid to think about. But interesting of what his name means too. Hoshea means salvation. But then his name was changed to Joshua, which means the Lord saves. So, and then actually in Greek, it's Jesus. Anyway, just a little side note to that. Any comments on that at all? Or just thought that was kind of interesting. All right. So Moses gets these guys and sends them out to the promised land. I want y'all to spy out the land. And they did good. I mean, they went out through all the land. And when they reached the valley of Eshcol, they cut off, this is Numbers 13 and verse 23. When they reached the valley of Eshcol, they cut off a branch bearing a single cluster of grapes. 2 of them carried it on a pole between them, along with some pomegranates and figs. So this is that land of flowing with milk and honey that the Lord had promised them that they were going to. And you get an idea here of how bountiful this land was, that it had, for a cluster of grapes to have two guys have to carry it on a pole between them. So this was a very fruitful land that they were about to have, that God was going to give them. But then when they got back, they had an account. They gave an account to Moses. Verse 27, they gave Moses this account. We went into the land to which you sent us, and it does flow with milk and honey. Here's the fruit. But the people who live there are powerful, and the cities are fortified and very large. We even saw descendants of Anak there. The Amalekites live in the Negev, the Hittites, the Jebusites, the Amorites live in the hill country, and the Canaanites live near the sea and along the Jordan. Then Caleb, one of the heroes here, he says, he silenced the people before Moses and said, we should go up and take possession of the land, for we can certainly do it. But they countered back, we can't attack those people. They are stronger than we are. And they spread among the Israelites a bad report. Now, Moses has picked these 12 leaders, right? 12 spies, but they were leaders. He had to pick people that he thought could do the job. 2 of them, they came back with a good report. 10 others, though, they not only came back with a bad report, but they, instead of going to Moses directly, I guess, sounds like they started spreading rumors amongst all the folks. Not a good leadership quality, I don't think. And then chapter 14, then Moses and Aaron fell face down in front of the whole Israelite assembly and gathered there. Joshua, son of Nun, and Caleb, son of Jephunneh, who were among those who had explored the land, tore their clothes and said to the entire Israel's assembly, the land we passed through and explored is exceedingly good. If the Lord is pleased with us, he will lead us into that land, a land flowing with milk and honey, and will give it to us. Only do not rebel against the Lord, and do not be afraid of the people of the land, because we will devour them. Their protection is gone, but the Lord is with us. Do not be afraid of them. So this is what Joshua is saying here.
You skipped over, though, verse 33 in chapter 13. That's what scared everybody. He said, we even saw Nephilim there.
Yes.
The giants, the descendants of Anak come from the Nephilim. To ourselves, we seem like grasshoppers, to them.
Yeah.
And everybody was, oh, no, we can't go into a land that's got giants in it.
I appreciate
That's what scared everybody.
Yeah, and I appreciate you saying that, because I actually had marked that and I skipped it. So thank you, sir. But yes, that they had reasons to be afraid, didn't they?
Right.
As anybody would. You go up against a big football team, you're worried about it, And it's an upset victory if you beat somebody like that. Well, yes, sir.
Think about David and Goliath. What's the difference? Faith. The kind of faith that's in Hebrews chapter 11. That whole chapter we
Yeah.
all those people. And that's what I tell folks when I talk to them. That's the kind of faith we got to have. And that's what happened with those guys who went and they spied out. And they looked as a physical attributes. They forgot about the spiritual attributes.
Faith is so very important. Hebrews 11, it says,
Without faith.
the writer of that book is saying that what a great cloud of witnesses. He's talking about these people of faith from years and years ago are looking at us. And I just think that's like we're in an arena and they're looking, these folks that have gone on before us, faithful men and women of God, they're seeing this play out. And God is watching this too. Without faith, it's impossible to please God. And so you can be as good as you want to be, but if you don't have faith, it says it's impossible to please God. So that's something we have to have. We have to believe in God. All right, anyway, now back to Joshua chapter 1. So what I'm saying is this, Joshua, this is where he starts. And Moses sees he's special, changes his name, and then he's picked him as the special leader. And as he went up on with Moses at the end of Deuteronomy there, with a mountain, and Moses died, and so he was the right hand man of Moses. And we see that several times in the end of Deuteronomy and Numbers. There we see how he was going to be. Moses was grooming him to be the head of the Israelites. Then. So after the death of Moses, Joshua chapter 1. The Lord, let me just start right here all over again. After the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord said to Joshua, son of Nun, Moses' aide, Moses, my servant, is dead. Now then, you and all these people get ready and cross the Jordan River into the land I'm about to give you to the Israelites. So, this is where we started. And what's so interesting about this commission of Moses here, that he's commissioning him, commissioning Joshua, is how he instructs him what he must do. And starting in verse 5, no one will be able to stand against you all the days of your life. As I was with Moses, so I will be with you. I will never leave you nor forsake you. Be strong and courageous, because you will lead these people to inherit the land I swore to their ancestors to give them. Be strong and very courageous. Be careful to obey all the law my servant Moses gave you. Do not turn from it to the right or to the left, that you may be successful wherever you go. Keep this book of the law always on your lips. Meditate on it day and night, so that you may be careful to do everything written in it. Then you will be prosperous and successful. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged. For the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. What's the important thing about here? What sticks out to you?
What sticks out to me is how many times he told him to be strong and courageous.
Yeah.
Every time he said something, he said, be strong and courageous. Do this and this and this. Be strong and courageous. Do this and this and this. He just emphasized you have got to be strong and courageous. And I think that if a leader is strong and courageous, that spills over into his followers.
Yeah.
Obedience is also important. Obedience.
Obedience, yes.
I don't think he wants to spend another 40 years.
Yeah. I think that 40 years would have toughened him up a little bit too, right? And 40 years gives Moses plenty of time to instruct him along and see how he is leading these people. and that kind of thing. Anything else with that? Yes, sir.
Well, the way I see it, the word courage is done in the presence of fear, not in the absence. That to be courageous is doing something afraid. So what this is telling me is, again, to be courageous, you need to be faithful to overcome that fear. That if you believe, the emotions might be screaming, I'm afraid, but the mind has to take over and say, but God is with me and he will see me through this, which is where then the courage comes in, that I'll do it afraid, but I trust him in what I'm doing. And so I see these words of strong and courageous as meaning lean on me, trust me.
All right.
Trust your emotions, trust me. And he was saying, read the book, know the book, know these words, so that you'll know me, you'll know who I am, you'll know what to do by the words of the book.
Yeah. The more you know, the more faithful you would be, I would think.
And if you think about it, had those people thought about that 40 years earlier, they'd already be in Canaan by that time.
Right. I've always been amazed at how unfaithful they were. And I would rather be back in Egypt, slaves, than be doing this. And, all these people, they're going to just take our wives and we're going to kill us and take our wives, and we would be better off in Egypt, that kind of thing. But then I have to.
The stuff that they actually witnessed
Yeah.
happening, and still they didn't believe. That's what I can wrap my head around.
Yeah.
I mean, they saw a sea opened up, and they saw a cloud of fire. That's things like that. That just don't leave your mind that easy. And they actually witnessed it.
Yeah.
But yet still, they lost faith.
And it's something that needs to be handed down generation to generation. Moses.
In Deuteronomy 6 and in chapter 11, Moses told them that you have got to tell your children this. You got to tell them your story. You got to tell them, when they go to bed, when they wake up, when we're walking down the street, you got to tell them all the time the history of where we came from.
Yep.
You got to tell them these things.
Yep. Yes, ma'am.
I've got marked in my Bible in Deuteronomy 33, verse 25, got it circled. It says, he was telling Asher, that thy shoes shall be as iron and brass, as thy days, so shall thy strength be. And in parentheses, I've got Grover Cleveland, our president at one time. Those are the words he lived by.
Uh-huh.
That's something for history buffs.
Very good. Yes, sir.
This goes to show you how powerful Satan is. He can mess with our minds, and if we let him, we change.
I guess Satan is always messing with us, isn't he? Always.
Always is.
Dad?
But God has been telling them that this land has been promised to them since Abraham's days. So the story has been told over and over all these years that they are going to possess this land. So it is hard to understand after it's been told and told and told, and as Danny has mentioned, they've seen all these miracles. Why? They didn't have the
Right.
to do what needed to be done
Yeah.
by God's word.
Yeah.
Virgil, something to take into account with God repeating over and over also is that they wandered for 40 years. So the same people that left Egypt are not even with this group anymore. I mean, there was a lot of them that had passed away. So could God have been repeating himself so that these other Israelites would know, hey, let's not let history repeat itself over and over and over and
Yeah.
over again?
Yeah. Mark?
Well, I find it interesting that, and I appreciate what's being said about the lack of faith. The disciples, even as they walked with Jesus, had doubt. And the one that blows my mind is the first time that Jesus spoke the Sermon on the Mount, he said, feed my people, I imagine. They looked at one another and went, how do we do this? We only have so many loaves of bread and so much fish, and it's not going to feed these people. How do we do this? So Jesus shows it to them, but then he speaks again and says, feed my people, and they turn to one another again and say, how do we do this?
Yeah.
They already did it once, but yet they still didn't have the faith. And it to me, it comes back to human nature. What do you trust? Do you trust your emotions? Do you trust your own mind? Or do you trust Jesus and you trust the Word? It's like Peter. Once he took his eyes off of Jesus, he started to sink. So it's where do you put your focus? Where do you put your mind? And where that is what you'll follow. And what you'll follow will either generate faith or it'll generate fear.
I've always been impressed with the Israelites and people in the New Testament, Peter and the apostles. See all this miraculous stuff happening, and then forgetting, and I'm thinking, these people are just like us. I mean, this is written for us. We would do the same thing. And if Jesus was here amongst us, if Moses was here and holding his staff out in the Red Sea party, and we walk across on dry land, and, you know, a week or so later you're hungry, and I'm ready to go back to Egypt. We depend so much on, on what we know, and we depend on ourselves, what we can do, and not on God and what He has planned for us. And so anyway, and I think that's why Moses picked somebody out to stay with him for 40 years in this desert, wandering around with this bunch of rabble people that were always doing things. Of course, and anyone over 20 years old was going to die, but except for Joshua and Caleb, right? Even Moses. Now, but that's all happened now, and now here they are at the Jordan River, and God tells Joshua, all right, get up. It's time to cross this river and get over here and get this land I've promised y'all. And Joshua, I think, ends up being a great campaigner, or like a general. I think of Eisenhower. He was sent to Europe and to run the Allied forces over there, and big 5-star general, and he had control over everything, and he just ran his campaign, and they knocked the Nazis out, and we took Europe back from Germany. But I just thought of that when I was reading about Joshua, and after he got through Jericho and had Ai, which was a downfall, but then just battles, and then they had to go in and go back and start taking all these other cities, and they just did it a little at a time until they finally took over the land. Pretty much, there was still a lot of lack of faith in what they did, and they still disobeyed God in a lot of things too. But anyway, let's look at this crossing the river. Chapter 2. And this is struck me kind of funny when you just think about it. Then Joshua, son of Nun, secretly sent 2 spies from Shittim. Go look over the land, he said, especially Jericho. So they went and entered the house of a prostitute named Rahab and stayed there. So what is the first thing he does after God tells him, hey, go take over the land? He said spies, and I thought, well, now, that didn't go so well before, and he does it again. But looks like he only sent 2 instead of 12, and then they reported back to him, I guess. So I guess he learned from it what he needed to do there. But then the king of Jericho got wind of it, and so he asked, he went to Rahab and asked her, where are these guys? Of course, she hid them, right? Up in under some flax, is that right? Yeah, stalks of flax she had laid out on the roof. So they did not see them. And she talked with the guy and said, look, they were here, but they've gone. They left right before the gates shut. But verse 8, before the spies laid down for the night, she went up to the roof and said to them, I know that the Lord has given you this land, and that a great fear has fallen on us, so that all who live in this country are melting with fear because of you. We have heard how the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea when you came out of Egypt, and what you did to Sihon and Og and the kings of the Amorites east of the Jordan, whom you completely destroyed. When we heard of it, our hearts melted with fear, and everyone's courage fell because of you. For the Lord your God is God in heaven above and on the earth below. So this is something that would be encouraging, I think, to Joshua. How would this help him be strong and courageous? I mean, you're about to take over this country with giants in it. The giants were there back 40 years ago. They're still there. Amalekites, sons of Anak, is that right? And so if you get a good report like that, that's going to be encouraging, isn't it? Is Satan a big giant for us? Is he someone we should fear?
The human side of us would fear him.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, he's pretty powerful. But you still have to think, greater is he that is in me than he that is in the world.
Yeah. That's true.
I mean, when you see all the evil, that's actually kind of scary.
Yeah. What's one way we cannot be afraid?
We have to know the one that is greater than him. We have to have the right relationship
Yeah.
with the Savior.
Pray without ceasing.
Okay. Always be in prayer.
Just look at this woman here, the most unlikely of people that you would think that God would use.
Yeah.
A prostitute. And how, look at the faith she had, even though she hadn't seen these things, she had just heard. And then she became instrumental with the path forward.
Yeah.
What if they went to someone else and got killed? I mean, that she could have just as easily been afraid that these people are going to kill me. They're coming to look for these guys, and I'm telling them a lie.
Yeah.
And if they find them, I'm dead. Maybe my family's dead. But God can use the most unlike this of people who have lived so foreign to how he would choose for them to live and make them great, make them instrumental in his plan.
All right. And she had heard that. Crossing the Red Sea, she wasn't there. That was 40 years prior.
And she was the one that told them, our people have heard about
Yeah.
this, and their hearts have melted. They're afraid.
Yeah.
And think how that encouraging that was when the two men went back and said, hey, they're scared to death of us.
Yep. Yes, sir.
What he said made a lot of sense, but if you think about it, we're all in here, we ain't seen nothing. We didn't see the Red Sea. We read it. We ain't seen, Jesus speaking to the Israelites, but we read it. We didn't see Jesus, but we believe it. And so I think just throughout history, and we'll continue how long we ever have, there's gonna be people that's gonna believe, but there's also gonna be people that don't. And, our mission is to rally with the people that believe so that we have more influence on the people that don't.
Yeah. Our war is with Satan, but it's not a war we're going to fight by ourselves. And that's why it's so important for this to happen right here, for us to come together and study the Word. Always be in the Word. That's what God is telling Joshua here. Know the Word, and not just know it yourself, but we need to tell each other it too, right? We learn it. And come together to worship. I mean, it's so encouraging. That's why it is prescribed to us by God to come to worship on the first day of the week. And we as elders have prescribed that we get back together on Wednesday too, because we know that, hey, let's eat. You got to be healthy. The church needs to be healthy. And so that's just part of it. Hearing that good word, that was encouraging to Joshua to hear from these spies like that. Okay. And again, it talks about that later on in the chapter about they were told this to Joshua. The end of the chapter says the spies are reporting to Joshua, the Lord has surely given the whole land into our hands. All the people are melting in fear because of us. So that was had to be great. So they're going to cross the Jordan now, and they got some specific ways they got to do it. And he has to get all of his guys together here. This is being Joshua, the leader. God tells him, all right, get the priest out there, get them with the ark on their shoulder, do it the right way. Don't touch the ark, for he didn't settle that, but that we find out that they're not supposed to do that later. But they get out there. What's the Jordan doing at this time of the year? It's flood stage. Are we kind of familiar with flood water here lately? Especially up north of here. It's a scary thing. But how much faith does it take for a priest scared of the ark to go up there and put his foot in the water, rushing water? And how big of a miracle is that for the people to see that? The water stops flowing and piles up in the heat up river, and it goes away, and this dry ground across that flooded river. But anyway, he has to do it the right way, and he has a plan. He already had it set up. He got 12 guys. Hey, y'all pick 12 guys here, and then later on when they cross the river, all right, you guys go back to the river. The priests are still standing in the middle of the river and with an ark on their shoulder. He said, y'all go back and get some rocks out from around where they're standing right there. Each one of you get one rock and bring it back over here to this side of the river. And what'd they do with that? Do you remember? Made a memorial. Yeah,
And that was to be a memorial for them. What God had done, had taken them across the Jericho.
yeah. And when their kids ask, hey, what is this thing? They're to tell them what that was. What does that show? What's important about that?
Remember what God's done for you.
All right? Yeah. To have something there. Danny, did you say something
That's
too?
part of the story that Moses was telling the children of Israel they needed to pass on.
Yeah, right. But yes, that was, when their children see that, it reminds them, God backed the water up here. We crossed right here. This is how we got over here on dry ground. It's an important story for them. I'm reminded too of important stories like that. We have a memorial on Sunday, every Sunday. We remember Christ, his death on the cross. And he set it up that way. Do this in remembrance of me. So we have our memorials too, don't we? They're very important. But then Joshua leads the country up. Let's see, I don't know how much time we got. 10 minutes. Oh yeah, there it is. What do these stones mean? Tell them that the flow of the Jordan was cut off before the ark of the covenant of the Lord. When it crossed the Jordan, the waters of the Jordan were cut off. These stones are to be a memorial to the people of Israel forever. So, and then later on in chapter 4, verse 13, about 40,000 armed for battle crossed over before the Lord to the plains of Jericho for war. That day the Lord exalted Joshua in the sight of all Israel, and they stood in awe of him all the days of his life, just as they had stood in awe of Moses. So Joshua, doing what God told him to do, and it was the effect that God wanted. You do what I say, and they'll follow you. What about us today? What about us? How should we get leaders today? Not worldly leaders. We have a process of that, for that too. But what about in the church?
It's important that they're faithful and they have a good reputation.
Okay.
They desire to be a leader.
All right. What else? A faithful person. Okay. Long time faithful. Yeah. I guess it is important to have some age.
You said it nicer
Sir.
You said it nicer than I did.
Well, I first became an elder when I was 47, and I thought, yeah, I had my reservations. And I thought, oh my, because at 47, you always think of somebody older than you as like, well, they're more esteemed than I am, more able to do that. At 47, I would be old to a lot of folks, but it's still humbling to have something like that come your way. But
I think 47 is not too young. I think we need young leaders. I'm not saying 20-year-old, but if they're qualified in every other way.
Yeah.
I think it's important to have young leaders.
well, and God
So
has
they can go along, not go along, but deal with the younger people, or,
Okay.
I can't think of the word.
I can't either, do.
Okay, keep going.
Hey, I've known 65-year-olds that were just as immature as they could be.
Yeah,
And then again, somebody like my daddy, he was an old man, he was 18 years old, so, you know, it's what it's your life, that's what it boils down to.
yeah, right. Well, of course, there are qualifications, and 1 Timothy and Titus that tells us what all the qualifications of an elder are. But then there's leaders among women. How should women lead?
Women can lead in a lot of different ways. I think, even women's ministries, we can teach. We can have a visitation program, it's just all kind of things that, women can do.
Yeah. One thing is to be like Moses was to Joshua and raise strong Christian women in your family or in the church. Always be looking and seeing who you can help out. Looking for good quality young women that can be taught to be matriarchs, I guess, or I'm not really sure. But anyway. Yes, ma'am.
I think the women have a real important role in the family, and encouraging and guiding their husbands as they serve the church in an official way, you might say.
Right.
And that encouragement and help and that support goes certainly a long way for success with that man.
Yeah. And I think guidance too. And you know, Denise and I'm an elder, she's an elder's wife. And an elder has to have, the way I read it is, he's married to one wife. And because I think it's important that an elder has a wife with him to help out. Discuss things, talk about things, see things that maybe the elder doesn't see by himself. And, hey, what about this over here? Yeah, okay, all right. Not that she does that a lot. Yes, ma'am. Ms.
I
Vaughn.
think a more mature lady that's full of wisdom, that's what we need to look for, somebody that's got godly wisdom.
All right.
And that goes for men too.
Yes, ma'am. Well, I think I've heard the first bell, and I think I'm about done unless y'all have something to say. We can sure keep discussing stuff if you want to. All right. Appreciate y'all. Class is dismissed.